And welcome back, everybody. It's Creative Redency back again, the one known as CR. And as you can tell by my title here, at the bottom right hand corner, this is a winter preparedness type of stream slash video slash replay. While I wait for some people to drop in here, I'm just gonna set everything up here. I'm doing this one thing to check on here. Hopefully my chat's actually working too. That'd be nice. And yes, my chat's working. Nice. That means I don't have to use a separate device. And I can be mobile with this now. So this is a winter preparedness type of stream. And the reasoning for this should be very clear. Very clear. If you live out in the central time zone, places out here out west here, you've seen it. I know my subscribers out there, the people I follow too, right? The channels I follow too, they've been showing it too, right? Their own area, their own location, showing the snow out there and all that stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's time to bring this back again because it matters. Snow, that Arctic wind, and all the layers in between all of that. It will matter. It will matter. Especially considering, like, tomorrow is the first day of the month. So, there's no, like, it's not even December yet. Yet, but eventually it will show up, right? It's dropped. Well, I know who's dropping by, at least. I mean, even for me, I was doing a little bit outside. Now, this morning, I actually saw minus 17 Celsius, 0 Fahrenheit out. And I've been looking at this extended forecast, and it's just like, it's like kind of a mix, like, I don't know, the yo-yo cycle almost seems like I'm pretty sure it won't trigger, it won't get cold enough for Environment Canada to trigger an extreme cold warning here. However, with that said, it's still chilly outside, alright? It's still below freezing. You can still get frostbite if you're outside long enough. You can still get hypothermic. Yeah. Hypothermic, let me say. If you're outside long enough, right? And honestly, staying dry is important. And so are the layers. Yeah, so I've been hearing. 25. Drops, it's like 19 Fahrenheit, 18 Fahrenheit here right now. It's minus 7 Celsius here right now. Actually, there is some sun. I actually will show you guys. Oh, but first I have to go get my stand for my phone here. Didn't put it on. I will put it on now. That way you can actually hold it. I think the last thing I want to do is drop it in the snow, right? Put on a coat hat here. Get some boots. I've had these boots out like virtually like all month. Howie, I see you in there. Welcome. Hasn't changed that much out here. See? Hasn't changed that much out here. I wonder what that is. I can see that happening, man. I can see that happening. I can totally see that happening. Props. Especially at conditions like that. And to think there's places in the world on our planet that are even colder than that. Even colder than that. Right? Some places in Siberia, right? You can look this up, right? It gets really extremely cold, like extremely cold. It makes -40 look warm, like that's how cold it is. It makes that look warm. It makes what I'm seeing right now look warm, right? Where if they saw temperatures like minus 0 Fahrenheit, -17, they'd be like, not necessarily t-shirt wear, but it wouldn't be as cold. Good evening, Shannon. How are you doing? I know I gotta show this more and more. If I would just walk. Hey, you know what I'll do? Let's see if I can do this. Make my mark in the snow here. Wait. Okay, see? C-R. Okay. I mean, so yes, this is a preparedness type of video. Just give me 1 sec here. Make sure my phone doesn't get too cold out here. I mean, it is sunny outside right now. It is. So it's a little bit more, not so bad, I guess. But then again, it's not always like this stuff for me. Close my door here. Whew. I mean, obviously I have a jacket on. Let me take off my hat here before I start sweating here. And that's the thing. You don't want to sweat too while you're outside. Because I know people out east right now. Out east. Specifically the Central Time Zone. For you guys in the US. Specifically because I've been seeing the videos for you guys. So, Iowa, Minnesota, right? That Central Time Zone. I've seen what people have been sending or posting right now. I'm just like, yeah, it kind of looks like more or less the same here as you just saw. More or less, right? More or less. I mean, it hasn't quote unquote snowed for a little bit, but I mean, this is sticking around a lot longer than the last 2 times earlier this month for November. Right, the first time when I really showed this back earlier in the month, right, back on the 7th, yeah, that stuff disappeared, right? But this will remain for a bit because the overnight temperatures are like 0 Fahrenheit, -17 Celsius. I mean, it'll be a bit. Although I'm supposed to get some less cold. I'm not even gonna use the word warmer. I'm just gonna say less cold. Maybe hover around the freezing mark. Maybe slightly above. Maybe 34. Maybe, right? But it won't last long for a year. It's supposed to come back to this again. So I'm expecting to see this yo-yo cycle again. Maybe even a freeze and fall cycle to a certain degree. Like even yesterday when I was outside, I was just like, there was certain places that the snow was melting. Just because there was some sunshine, it's a dark surface, maybe it's against a wall, against a building or something like that. Oh, whatever that drops. I don't want to scare the people away. I just started the stream, dude. It's only been 10 minutes. Not even, right? Let's see here. So yes, what have I been doing to prepare for this winter? I mean, more like what haven't I done? At times, I mean, I've gotten clothing options out. Clearly, I think of all the things to start with in winter preparedness is obviously the body and the mind too, right? Also, you want to have the willingness to do it, right? But the body, right? So before water, before food, right? Because that stuff, yeah, days, weeks, or whatever, up to, right? But exposure outside at certain temperatures, especially below freezing, can get to you more quickly. And something, and the thing is, like shoveling snow, if you're like elderly or older or whatever, or that heart condition or whatever, right? Pace yourself out there. Pace yourself out there. If you gotta shovel the snow, do a little bit. Take a layer off of it. A nice thinner swatch of it. A manageable amount of weight that you can handle, right? Not everyone's like 18, young and mighty, right? Some of us, we've got maybe knee, back issues or something like that, and always, like I said, lift with your knees, all right? Do you want to be, because sometimes, from what I've been hearing out east, especially in the states of Minnesota and Iowa, right, that they would say, and I can relate to it to a certain degree, where you do a little bit removal of the snow, and then it's like not even like an hour or two later, you come back outside, it's like it looks like you didn't even do anything, because like literally it just got covered again because it's still, the precipitation's still coming down. Yeah, Shannon. Yeah. Let me highlight that. Come on. Yeah. You pace yourself. I know around here, a lot of people are like that too. It's just like, yeah. Because especially if it's still snowing, right? You just want to pace yourself. Just kind of, because you don't want to do that all at the end. Especially if you're doing it by hand. I mean, it's one thing if you're using a snowblower or machines to help you around. Alright, that's one thing. But if you're doing it by hand or whatever, with a shovel, right? You want to be spacing it out. That way you don't overexert yourself. And one of the more important things is don't sweat. Moisture in the winter freezes, gets cold, draws heat away from the body, and you start getting cold. And next thing you know, everything's gonna happen. And obviously, let me wrote that off the screen here. Hi Vanessa, Kitty, I see you in there. So I've been hearing about that drops apparently. Let's see. Yeah. So, like I said, I've been getting stuff ready here. Let me just show this. I'll just put this on the ground. For example, like a toque, a hat, watch cap, whatever you want to call this type of thing. This is just a simple one. This would be something I would start with. For example, I know Drops mentioned this getting a frozen face at a certain temperature, even with something like a ski mask on, alright? I mean, I've never experienced temperatures that cold. I've been outside before. Even went for a walk. Because it was February. And yeah, one of the coldest times I've walked. Where it was like, might as well have been minus 40 at that time. Right? Arctic windshield, wind. Probably felt even colder, obviously. No sun outside, wind, and all that stuff. Compounding all that stuff against you. Wind blowing the heat off of you and all that stuff. And at that time, if you see me wearing 5 or 6 layers, you know it's cold outside. Like, some of these places in, like, Siberia and probably other places too, right? Some of these people, it takes them, like, 10 minutes to get dressed before they go outside. Because they're putting on, like, that many layers. Because it's absolutely, like, required. Because or else you will get cold. You will feel it. You will start to shiver and stuff like that. Because it's, like, colder than anything I've experienced personally, right? I know some of you may have experienced temperatures like that in the past from your previous jobs, vacations, trips and stuff like that, where you had to, right? Where you had to be outside. People that actually have to be outside, for example, in conditions like that because they're doing certain little things. Yeah, you're buying new thermals and earlier soon? Nice. Yeah, okay. Okay, Vanessa. You have four season thing in your buggo bag? Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I still add, and I just leave in there now, is a set of gloves or mitts. Because they don't take up that much room. And I can still technically use them to a certain degree, alright? That's one of the things I made sure I have with me. Even if, like, a day-to-day thing, right? I have some spare gloves, maybe in a pocket or something like that. Just in case it's a little bit more chilly than I think. I'm outside a little bit longer than I think. The gloves are mitts. Maybe they got wet, you know? I had to shovel some snow or whatever, right? Something or wet snow or whatever, and the layers are getting wet, such as the mitts or whatever. I can change into something dry because dry clothing will always be warmer than anything that's wet, even if it's wool, right? Right? I mean, what's gonna be warmer, dry wool or wet wool? Right? Given that arbitrary number that you always hear, 80%, even if it's wet, right? Well, you're still losing 20% heat, right? So ideally, the best thing is to stay dry as possible. Keep your layers dry. I'll say that again. Keep your layers dry. If you feel like you're starting to break sweat or overheat, let some of that heat out, right? Because it's probably better to do something like that than to break a sweat and then have to let that evaporate, and it'll cool you down, right? Obviously, water's gonna pull heat away from you. In the same way that during the summertime, water on the skin's nice because it cools you off a little. You kind of don't want that happening in the winter, especially if it's below freezing, or even hovering around the 44 Celsius mark or lower. Let's see here. Did I miss something? I just wanted to read what Shannon wrote. I mean, yeah, that's the thing too, right? It's all relative too. I've said this before. It's just like if you're used to seeing something like over 104 Fahrenheit, 40 Celsius, even let's say 86 Fahrenheit, 30 Celsius, right? And the temperature drops down to like that 40 Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius mark, it actually will probably feel quite chilly because you're probably in an area that's like a desert, for example. Because even deserts there's a certain point where, they can cool off quite dramatically, right, at night. Obviously not like Arctic cold, but relatively speaking, right? Okay. Snow Fort Worth, too. Yeah, I imagine. Like I said, show us again. Snow, and actually I'll break something out while I'm at it too. Put something on too. Bring my seating pad back out again. Oh, I guess it would be also important. The tube that I just put down. That'd be important too, right? And that's the thing, you don't want to drop this stuff. I mean, I've seen it, and I'm always so curious when I see it, right? That lonely glove on the road, that lonely mint on the sidewalk. I'm like, thinking to myself, dang, someone dropped it, right? Yeah, and you figured you'd be wearing it, right? But sometimes you take it off or whatever, right? You could do what maybe your parents, even my parents, have done in the past, right? A little string or cordage to tie it on the inside, right? So you don't lose your mitts or gloves, right? If you want to do that, or some sort of lanyard if you want. Probably important, especially if you're doing activities outside, like skiing, for example, or tobogganing, where you don't want to forget your glove or your mitt at the top of the hill, right? Especially if it's really cold out. See, more snow. Let's see. And no drops. I'm not done. Change this, man. I'm not changing this. This should have been like my thumbnail. I should have just used this as a thumbnail here. I mean, this ain't that much. Like, you can see the grass underneath, right? So this is still fairly fresh, powdery, like undisturbed. It'll start to, especially as it snows more in the season, this will start to, well, change into ice. Right? The snow will compress down in time. And I know I'm erasing my CR here, but whatever. I'll be able to do it again. Oh, no. There. I'll make a little one. There we go. You can screenshot that! Oh. See, it's not that I can't stay out here too long. It's that more like my device won't cool down too much. But I'll come back out in a moment and show something else here. Something I've shown on a previous live stream. And then on a previous video. Whew. I'll go back up, read my chat here to see what I missed. Well, it is possible, drops. Alright. Higher elevations, right? Mountainous areas, right? And stuff like that. You can linger around longer. In 2021, alright? February of 2021. Some people saw it for the first time for themselves, right? And I remember when I was seeing those videos, right? I actually did take some more time afterwards to see some more stuff and see what people were doing. Because like I said, what's the first things that happen? You're gonna get cold. Or you could get cold, right? Because physically, the temperature's lower outside, right? Lower than body temperature. So, it's all, as soon as you step outside, right? The environment, all the heat's escaping from you. The only thing that help, of course, clothing, cover, layers, those, that type of gear, right? That helps to insulate and slow, I say slow, not stop, but slow the heat loss. You can never stop the heat loss, alright? You can, virtually speaking, right? You cannot stop it, right? As soon as you walk outside, you're losing heat. Now, layers, a jacket, so forth, ski pants, all that stuff. It buys you time. It reduces the heat loss, so you don't feel as cold for the time that you've been outside. But if the temperature is low enough, and if you've been outside long enough, you may still feel cold. I mean, like, I know Drop said, like, minus 50 Fahrenheit, right? Even with a ski mask on. And temperatures like that, I'd be like, putting on 2 or layering it in, alright? So if you have something like, let's say like a ski mask or something like that, and if you've experienced where it doesn't cut it anymore, right? Maybe consider on adding layers into it, right? Because I don't know how thick that was for you, Drops, or like how many layers that was, or whatever, right? Or if it was wool, synthetic, or whatever, right? But, more layers, more trapped air, right? Like back was it last December? It was either last December or the beginning of the year in January. No, I think it was in December. Yeah, so it's been almost about a year, 11 months, where I took you guys. Hey, you guys can check out that video, right? But where I went outside when it was about what -27 Celsius, -15 Fahrenheit, give or take, right? Where I went out for that walk, I actually had to wear something a lot more layers because I was out there. See, the video you only saw like 5 minutes, right? Well, I was actually outside for like over an hour on that. I went for a walk and brought you guys along. I couldn't show that much because t- uh, electronics, batteries, and cold usually don't go so well, right? Because it just pulls the heat right out, and yeah, and the battery just drains so fast. Yeah. Layers is the key, yeah. Yeah, I do too. Let's see. Yeah. Layers is the key. And I mentioned this before, but I have I have a follower here on the channel. Well, I actually follow two, right? Who does not have a permanent residence right now. I'll say it like that, right? So I mean, not monetary, but I've been helping them out, like with suggestions, anyways, right? Because they're outside, and sometimes and one of the things I always ask them is like, "Are you dry?" Right? Are you dry? Because that's important. Because I always ask that first. Well, especially this time of year, since I've known them, right? I've actually spoken to them, like voice chat, anyways, right, on their own stream as a panel member, and got to know them a little bit better, right? And I've been trying to suggest some ideas, right, for their own area. They live in the U.S. They don't live down a little bit more down south, but when you don't, it's kind of different when you don't have a nice warm home, warm shelter to get back into, right? It's one thing to shovel the snow and come back into a warm environment, right? 20, 30 minutes later, right? But when you're outside for long periods of time, you don't need those shelter elements, right? To hold back the heat that you're generating. Because and I say we, as in all of us, right? We're always generating heat. We are the furnace. We are, right? We're our own furnace. So you want to be keeping that heat next to you as much as possible. Have that layer of heat next to you. That'll keep you more insulated from the more extreme cold that you may be experiencing outside at that time. And not only that, you want to block any of that wind, because windshield is one of those things. It's one thing if it's like, -30, -22 Fahrenheit. It's totally different if there is like any kind of wind. It's, it doesn't even have to be that strong. If the temperature is low enough, right, even a mild breeze at times can feel quite cold just because the windshield, it's blowing the heat right off of you. Anything that's not wind that can divert or protect you against the wind, let's say like a shell on a jacket, if the wind's going through you, you'll feel that. Like any exposed skin, you'll feel that. You will feel that in time. Like I've said before, everyone has their tolerances to heat and cold, but there's an upper limit to that. There is an upper limit. I mean, there's videos. Supposedly, there's someone out there that went like barefoot in the snow, right? Yeah, they trained for that. They didn't come. They had some things happen, right? So it wasn't like they weren't. How do I say? No. Okay, I'll say it like that. No one's invincible against the cold. Right? Yeah, everyone has their tolerances. Everyone, you can train yourself. You can all this stuff, but there's a certain temperature, a certain amount of time where your body's not like. I I can't keep up with this, right? You're losing too much heat, and you're starting to get cold. Hello, Iron Fire Horse. Thank you for dropping by. I appreciate it. You got snow. You got snow there, right, Iron? I'm assuming you do, by now. Because if it, I don't know if that system ended up in Ontario. I didn't actually check that, but I know it ended up in Minnesota and Iowa. Because I've seen the videos from my followers and the people that I follow. I'm like, yeah. Or I think some said 8 inches, half a foot, right? And of course, that adds up. Probably, for most of us, it's probably the first kind of snowfall of this season, right? So, yeah. You did get some a couple nights ago. Yeah, earlier in the week. Yeah. I see drops. I don't think anyone likes walking barefoot on hot sidewalk. I might be like, ooh ah, right? That's the kind of the floor is lava like. I'm sorry, I had to say it like that. I had to drop something warm in here, cause the kind of like offset the cold chat here. Because I remember this one time I actually like mentioned the temperature to someone on their live stream, and they're like on their side. I just wrote the words, right, and they just like they instantly shivered. Ooh, right. I was like, dang, I shouldn't have said that, right? But they're used to, let's say, 20 Fahrenheit minus 7, so 8 Celsius, right? Maybe at worst, not what the temperature I said at that time. Where I was just, and at that time it was when the Arctic wind shield. Environment Canada here did trigger the extreme cold warning. Usually that's for me here within that minus 15 Fahrenheit, minus 27, 28 Celsius range, right? Or lower is usually where they trigger it, right? But far before that even happens, right? Because the temperature is not, like, it is below freezing, right? And don't get me wrong, it is well, cold enough, right? But you want to prepare before that more extreme kind of cold develops in time for your area, wherever you are, right? And I'm mostly talking about people that live in a more northern latitude, higher elevations and such, right? Obviously, stuff like if you're out east, central time zone, Ontario, Quebec, all that stuff around the Great Lakes, you got things like lakeside effect snow and stuff like that to be concerned about. I do not live out east, right? So I'm not as familiar with that, but I know the terminology because people have said it, and I hear it on the live streams and all that stuff. Yeah. Well, I'll cross my fingers for you. Keep you in my thoughts, Iron Fire Horse. So, I'll say that to you straight up, first and foremost. So yeah, like coming back to the shelter element, right? The clothing element, the layers and stuff like that. This person, because I've attended their live stream, and like I said, they don't have a permanent residence right now, and I'm always like, there is this old school kind of technique where you would stuff newspaper in your jacket, right? Well, since newspaper is kind of like, the kind of new way of doing it is now with plastic bags or shopping bags or something along the lines of that. Because, crumple up newspaper bags, something along the lines of that, right? It creates air pockets within, right? Which you warm up. And therefore, you have that layer of warmth next to you, right? That protects you to to a certain degree, right? That's important because I've asked this person before, right? I'm like, because they live in an area that can see rain too, right? Or maybe rain at like let's say at 4 or 5 Celsius in that 40 Fahrenheit range, right? And I always ask them too, because even at that range, yeah, technically it's not below freezing, but it's that rain that they're getting or whatever isn't warm, right? That's like cold rain. I remember even here I saw rain when it was like 4 or 5 out. It's still falling as rain, not right, but if you get wet in that, damp or whatever, you'll start feeling that, especially if there's wind. You'll start to notice that. Although windshield is calculated usually when it's actually below freezing, but you can still get cold at that 40 Fahrenheit range. And the same reason why I say, like, when it's hovering around the freezing mark, it can feel warmer if it's been colder, but if it's been warm and it gets down to that, it'll probably feel a lot cooler or cold anyways. Yeah. I've heard about this now. I mean, there's that old school method. If you don't with your windows, you put the clear. You hair dry it, make sure it's nice and taut and all that stuff. I've heard about the bubble wrap, right? If you get enough of it to cover your windows, right? Because it does have air pockets, right? And these air pockets can't interact with each other, right? Because they're separate. So you remember, if the space is too big, right? The air pockets are too big. Generally speaking, what's not happen is convection can happen, and convection. Yes, I'm trying to say it right. Will is one of the three ways that you will, that heat transfers. In addition to radiating out or through conduction loss, right? So your feet touching the ground is conducting heat away from you. Wind blowing over your face or your neck is pulling heat away from you. And obviously you're radiating out heat. Well, all of us are radiating out heat all the time, right? This is why we're warm-blooded, right? We have to keep our core body temperature relatively around that 37 Celsius, 98.6 degree mark, relatively speaking, all right? Relatively speaking. If it gets even a few degrees low, you start to go slide down and, yeah, things start happening, beyond just shivering, right? But yeah, I haven't tried that out though. Although I have tried bubble wrap before, right? It is possible, but I mean now, you know, I've heard about this. I mean, I've tried it out. I have actually used bubble wrap on me before, on the inside, right, as insulation, right? Because it's gonna later out whatever, right? And I just kind of added it into the layers that I was wearing. Like I had clothes on, obviously I had clothes on, but I actually had a jacket on. I had a toque on, right? I just added a little bit more in, right? Just because I could, right? Because I had to walk back for like 45 minutes or so, right? I think it was like minus 20, minus 230 Fahrenheit, no, minus 20 Celsius, all right? And it was at night too. I'm just like, yeah, I'll add this in. If I said, if I get too more or I feel like I might be breaking a sweat, let's vent out some of that heat, right? Just enough so I don't sweat, but not enough to start getting cold from, right? Because obviously, I zipper back up my jacket and try to warm up that space back up, right? Well, I guess it might have a secondary use, right, Jarps? I mean, I got some sheeting material like that too, if absolutely necessary. Not specifically for that reason that he said, but for our reasons, right? Especially if there's some random thing, right? You know, I think that's the last thing I won't need is like a broken window in the winter. Not saying it's not possible, but you know, let's just say something, whatever, right? Because I would need something like that in the meantime. In the meantime, while waiting to repair it and fix it in a legit good way, right? Something like sheeting, tape, and stuff like that would be a temporary thing, like overnight or something like that, until someone can come by or whatever the next day or whatever, right? Because I think that would be the last thing. Because basically that's like opening up your jacket and letting the heat out. Right? You're letting the heat out. Now windows aren't, are probably more vulnerable. Like even double, triple pane glass, right? That stuff's more efficient, lets less heat out, right? But windows are still vulnerable to losing heat in comparison to like the wall, right? You probably do lose a little less heat from the wall compared to the windows, but it still happens, right? Like, because even during like older times, I'm talking about probably before electricity, during medieval times, and probably times before all that, right? Because obviously winter has existed before we were here, right? So like people used to use like heavy drapes, thick drapes, hang wool over windows, right? To cover it, right? To prevent the wind from blowing in, for example. Because back in the past, before glass was like not as common as it is today, right? Like you look at any house, like what's the first thing you see in a house? Think of a house, right? Doors, obviously that shape, and windows, right? Well, in the past, that stuff was like expensive, maybe reserved for like the church, for example, right? That stained glass feel, or for the upper class, right? So anyone on the lower class, peasant or whatever, right, with less money or whatever income, right, they had to make do with what they had, right? They didn't use windows in the past. They had to like cover it with, something else, right? What they had. It could have been like I said, a sheet or something like that, where it may be able to let some light in. Not as transparent as glass, but at least it would block the wind from coming in and slow it down, so you wouldn't get that influx of wind coming into your like home at that time. Let's see here. Yeah, maybe that. Iron Fire. Let's see here. Yeah. That might help. That might help, Iron Fire. That might help, actually, right? That may actually help. Because I've been researching some things. Not just videos, but some of these kind of passive things too, right? Like, I'm not even talking about active heat sources yet, right? Because remember, active heat sources generally, and I say generally, right, require a consumable like fuel of some sort, right? Propane, wood, whatever, right? Because if you think about it, you can have the best heat source possible, fire pit, a fire pit, blah blah, stove, blah blah, right? But if your home itself is not well insulated, you're pretty much like losing heat all the time, right? Or you're consuming more of that fuel, the consumable, more than you need, relatively speaking, right? Relatively speaking, for that comfort level, right? So, because if you think about it, down south during the Texas freeze, right? These homes are not built for the cold. Were not built for the cold, right? Very minimal, if any, insulation, right? Because they're meant for the heat, or you know what I mean, not necessarily for the cold, right? In comparison to air places in the world, northern latitudes, like here in Canada. Those around here are probably a little bit different than down south, right? In terms of insulation and stuff like that. Double pane, triple pane windows in comparison, right? And stuff like that. Because that's why, like I said, we gotta take it seriously. Because right now, we just got a first taste of it, right? We all know, generally speaking, there will be another wave of that cold snow, wind, or something in between, right? You know, maybe it'll moderate back up to like a better temperature, or more seasonal or above seasonal, but it might yo-yo back down again. Like even for me, right? I might actually see like wet snow, maybe even plus 133 Fahrenheit. Then, like next weekend for me, it's supposed to be even colder than it is today. Right? Where I will actually probably will see minus 20, minus 2-ish, 3-ish Fahrenheit. I mean, if you're out there long enough, it's cold enough. You know, if you're not used to it, it's cold enough. I see iron fires. Yeah, that too. That too drops. Yeah. All right. It's not just for a hurricane area, right? Stuff like that. Just something, you know, to block the wind, right? Just in case something happens. And the thing is, we gotta remember here. In certain areas, right? Unless you got no trees around your place at all, you know what I mean? Winter storms, especially if it's freezing rain, can cause things to sag, be pulled down due to the weight of that ice, right? Or the snow, right? And it does happen. It definitely does happen. I'll let you guys. I'll let you two like get your frustration out here. But yes, another thing I've been doing is I haven't actually pulled. Right now. I've been wearing this kind of. How do I say this? I'm in a transitional zone for the clothing right now, where basically I have a coat jacket that's warm enough, right? But it's not really a shell. So, wet snow, extremely high winds, extreme cold, not as suitable, right? I can dip into something that has a shell, something that has more insulation, that can repel wet snow, repel or block or deflect the wind around me more, right? So it doesn't below that heat that I'm generating, that all of us are generating, that I'm generating off my body, right? And stuff like that. And obviously, you know, I got layers underneath. You know, you got your base layer, your insulation, and your shell, for example. 3 core things in terms of layering for the winter, right? You kind of want to have something like that as much as possible. Yeah, okay, iron foils. Yeah. But if you look at winter, for example, like especially here in Canada and obviously some places in the U.S., right? You know, the winter kind of lasts a little bit longer than a couple weeks, maybe even more longer than a couple months, right? So like for me here, it's really maybe a third, not quite half the year. Thank goodness, but like at least a third of the year of the calendar year, at least 3 months out of the year, where I'll start to see colder more snow, more frozen white rain, frozen precipitation, and all that stuff, right? So this is why I always try to get ready. Let's say late September, early October. Like I'm not gonna pull out ski pants in October or September, but they're on standby. The jacket that has the show, it's on standby, right? I can dip into it right away, you know, see a forecast in the distance, blah blah blah, and be like, okay, it's time to bring this out, right? Yeah, it warrants being brought out and being used, right? That includes like little things for your hands, your feet, your legs, obviously your face, your neck, and all that stuff, right? That's all important too. You know, just because you brought that up randomly, Shannon, about a sandwich, remember you gotta fuel the body. Metabolic with because we're burning energy in the winter, shoveling, right? Staying warm, right? You gotta fuel the body, right? With something with high caloric intake of whatever it is, right? Because obviously, to maintain our internal furnace, we gotta quote unquote burn some fuel for it, aka food energy, caloric intake, right? Right? It's the crown jewels of it. Joules. Yeah, I had to throw that in. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yeah, I think if I had this like kind of list of like forms of precipitation that I don't like overall, freezing rain is way up there. If not first, then second. Because freezing rain is one of those things that there may be snow on the ground already. Or whatever, right? It might not be cold, but there's ice, right? Or it's this freeze and thaw cycle where the temperature's hovering around the freezing point, maybe above freezing during the day, then it freezes back, the snow melts, but freezes back overnight, right? And you go get those random sheets of ice in places, right? Where you gotta be careful. You want to watch where you're stepping. Ice cleats, traction aids, and all that stuff are very important. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially if you're outside, right? Because, like, shoveling snow, I'm pretty sure you're burning more calories than just walking in that same distance, right? In that same distance, because you're pushing the snow or lifting it, right? And obviously, snow is frozen water, right? And water is heavy for what it is, right? You know, pretty sure not everyone's able to lift like 20 pounds of snow on a scoop by hand with no aid of some sort, right? And to do that more than a few times, right? And so, you want to, if you're shoveling, right, you want to, because I think people want to rush it at times, right? So they do a lot more than they can handle at times, right? Because you want to be able to sustain that, especially if it's still falling, outside. It's still like periods of snow in the forecast, right? Like usually when I see that in the forecast, I always, let's say as it starts, I'll just do a little bit, come back an hour, 45 minutes, like Shannon, and come back out and do some more, right? And just kind of warm back up or whatever. Have a sip of my coffee, maybe, have some oatmeal and then come back outside again, right? And pace myself because it's gonna be a longer term thing, right? It's not like, oh, the snow, it stopped, right? Yeah, then I'll come outside and finish it, make it look nice, right? But usually, if it's still snowing, I usually just push it aside, then I'll pick it up or scoop it out afterwards, right? Because I just want to start the path on it, right? I feel like I'm missing something here. Hold on. Oh, and get my coffee at the same time. Get my coffee at the same time. Here. Oh, lucky you, I'm fine first. Well, that's cool, Shannon. That's cool. Yeah. It was wet snow, right? Where like an inch of it you can tell it's not the fluffy stuff, right? Where a couple inches feels heavy, mostly because there's less air in it and it's more water, and also it's gonna be heavier, right? And stuff like that. Like fluffy snow, like if it's like let's say like a couple inches of fluffy snow, yeah, most people can do that easily, right? Even one-handed to a certain degree. But wet snow, that's more challenging, and stuff like that. And this is like I'm talking without mechanical advantage aids, right? To help you out. So machinery like a snow blower or a blower or those things that have the brushes, right? When you don't have access to it, because obviously when you got access to it, yeah, it is a little bit easier, right? It is a little bit easier. Anyone that does commercial or residential snow removal, right? Uh, For contracts and stuff like that, right? They got that stuff. They got hand shovels too, right? But they got the equipment like a snow blower, amongst some other things, right? Because yeah, they're doing it as a business. They're trying to do it fast, right? As fast as possible, right? But they still have regular hand tools too, right? Because sometimes you gotta remember you can't squeeze on the deck the let's say the snowblower, right? So you're doing it by hand, right? Just pushing it to the side, finding a spot to put it, right? And that's another thing to keep in mind is where you're putting the snow. I mean, if you don't get a lot in here, that's what probably don't have to worry about that as much. But for some people out there that get a little bit more, or it's a major dumping of it, right? Do consider where you're putting it too, right? Because there's a certain, when I say height, where of a snowbank that's still manageable, and even I think to me, if the snowbank or snow pile starts to be like people tall, like above your waist, chest height, let's say 3-4 feet high, maybe consider leveling it back out, right? And like pushing some of the snow somewhere else, right? That way you still have room to pile it, right? Because there's been times where, in the past, where certain places it falls like historical records of snowfall, right? Where they're running out of room to put the snow in places, right? And like one of the last ditch options is to dump it into the water or river. It's because it's just like there is no other place to put it, right? They can't have the snowbank like 6-7 feet tall or higher, right? Because you can't see over it. Vehicles can't see. You can't see the sidewalk. You can't see people on the sidewalk. You can't see vehicles, right? It becomes a hazard, right? Because you can't see, right? So they got to deal with it. And this is why I also make sure my snowbanks aren't that high, right? That way, if someone's like walking by or whatever, they can still see a car that's on the road, and vice versa, right? You the machine, girl. You the machine. Just make sure that machine don't break down on you, right? Right. Just make sure it don't break down on you. That's the more important thing. Well, here left a 15-foot pile of snow right in the front of your. Oh, can hardly get. Ah, yeah. See, that's another thing too, right? Yeah. And the thing is, you know, for anyone that's seen the people digging out their vehicle, in a parking lot. It's like that, right? It's like that. For example, because they parked it for like the whole time that it snowed, right? I see. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep that in mind when I see you drop into one of my streams or leave me a comment or whatever. I'll be like, "Whoa, guys, the machine's here." It'll be like this inside joke, but yeah, I'll be like, "The snow machine's here." No, but anyways, on a serious note, because I'm trying to keep the series a little lightheaded every so often to diffuse it, but like I'm trying to keep this seriously because, like I said, preparing for winter. Because, like I said, we're just starting the season. Like technically, we haven't even. Well, we all know we haven't even. We're not even past the winter solstice yet, right? Right? Because usually, even a lot of places, it's like if not December, it's that January, February where you might see that more extreme cold or whatever, right? I mean, for me here, it is usually December, January, February where I see the most. I shouldn't say most, but some of the coldest parts of the year for me here, and I'm talking about like Environment Canada's triggering an extreme cold warning. It's like -30 or lower, -22 Fahrenheit or lower, right? And then it's not just for a day or two. It may be for, let's say, a week, or it feels like even for a week, right? Where if I'm talking to people or whatever, they're like saying to me, it's like, "CR, yeah, I'm sick of this cold," right? Right? And these are people around here, right? They're Canadian, right? They know it happens, right? And stuff like that. They got their snow tires on. They got the snow plow out and all that stuff, right? Like I remember, I was helping someone out, and like I should almost go get it, but earlier in the year, I showed these gloves that I converted into mitts. There's a video on it, right? Well, I saw someone with. They said their hands were cold. They were wearing two pairs of gloves. Now these aren't like very expensive or highly insulated type of gloves, right? Similar to what I showed in that video. So basically, I helped them out. I said to them, I'm like, they're like, yeah, their hands were so cold. Cause I think it was like minus, it had to be like -22, minus, what? Yeah, minus 4, 6, 7 Fahrenheit, something along the lines of that, right? So it was cold enough, right? It was cold enough, any exposed skin, blah blah blah, and all that stuff, right? And remember that gloves are less warm generally than mitts because mitts, your fingers, not your thumb, but your fingers are closer together, right? They can share the heat, right? They're not separated by material. However, obviously you get less dexterity, but your hands warmer, right? So what's the trade off, right? Because if your hands are cold, well, you don't got much dexterity too, right? Because you can't move your hands. You can't do that pinky thumb test or whatever. You can't grab like, especially if you're like not actively shoveling like by hand and you're using like say a snow blower or a blower or a leaf blower, right? Because when you're using a snowblower or even a leaf blower, right? You're not actually moving the snow. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, you're still moving it, but you're not manually moving it. So you're not generating that extra energy to do that, right? To stay warm with, right? Because when I see people that do this commercial type of snow removal, residential or whatever, right? They got, I mean, yeah, they got the safety vests, blah, 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 and jackets on, right? But I think it's more that to keep warm with, right? Because they're outside for a bit, right? And obviously, when they leave the job, go towards the next job, they're driving, right? They'll warm back up. But while they're outside, I've seen them for myself. They go like, really thick gloves or mitts on, really thick jacket, a hood, a toque, right? Probably even ski pants, maybe depending how cold it is, right? But yeah, because they're out there for a very long period of time. Like, if you ever get a chance to talk to people like that and ask them what they're wearing, they'll be like, they'll probably tell you almost the exact same thing. They'll probably be like, yeah, I got like 4 layers on, you know, because it's 0 Fahrenheit, -17 Celsius. The wind's blowing and all that stuff, right? Because they're using a snowblower. It's colder out. They're not actively moving the snow manually and generating extra body heat. Yeah. I didn't check out down in the GTA. I didn't check on that kind of forecast, but yeah. It's almost that time. I think it's that time again. Hey, I'm gonna do this. Let's go bring this outside. I'll bring this outside here. Alright. And do this again. Got my boots here real quick. I'm not gonna do this for this long. Let's illustrate my point here once again. Alright? Illustrate my point here once again on this. This is for a dramatization and to illustrate a point here, right? I do not actually recommend doing this randomly at times, right? But let me open up my camera here. Snow. My seating pads. Alright? Yeah, I got a boots on. I'm gonna show this. The reason why I made this in the first place, alright? And I'll show this for like a couple minutes at least. Alright. I'll stand on this without sliding out with a bare foot. I'm just gonna leave that on camera for a little bit here. The bottom of my foot's not cold, by the way, because I have the Mylar and the insulation backing it up. Alright, on top of the snow. I've shown this sitting down on this, right? But I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm gonna show it like this and do it like that for a little bit of time here. Like, obviously, the top of my foot's not get cold because there's nothing blocking or protecting it or insulating it. But the bottom of my foot is actually quite warm. And it's actually, the bottom of my foot actually feels the same kind of warmth that it is in my boot. Alright? Because there's insulation. I'm not directly touching the ground. Alright? The heat. Yeah, there is some heat conducting out. Don't get me wrong. There is some convection loss, right? Like I said, heat's always being lost from us. It's always escaping us, right? And I'm just slowing it down, right? So the heat loss is less. Can't stop it, but you can slow it down. You can slow down the heat transfer. Therefore, you feel warmer for that same period of time, or you have that buffer zone of heat until, you know, unless you've been outside for like, let's say, days and days straight. What's it say? Not just 10 minutes or a few hours, right? Or if it's extreme cold. See? My foot. I'm starting to shine up the surface here. How long has it been? I think at this rate my phone might actually want to tap out before my foot does. But yeah. I know I don't recommend actually doing it like this. This is a dramatization to illustrate a point on conduction loss and insulating yourself on the ground as much as possible, especially if you're outside for long periods of time. Like, for anyone that's, you know, sat in a stadium in the winter, for anyone that's gone tobogganing in the winter, for anyone that's gone skiing in the winter, for anyone that's sat on a bench or whatever in the winter, right? That conduction loss, right? It is a thing. I mean, my foot's still warm. Well, not if I get snow on it. It doesn't help. Hold on a sec. Not if I get snow on it. Let me put my foot. foot down. Not if I get snow on it. That doesn't help. Right? Because the snow will start to melt. I gotta keep my foot dry, right? And like I said, it is -7 Celsius right now. There's barely any sun, right? The only thing that's keeping my foot warm right now is the insulation on the bottom, right here. Right? It's not even that thick. Like, if I actually like started to like roll this over a little bit and start to cover my foot, right? It actually started feeling warm. Actually, it is starting to feel warm because I have insulation. All right. I'm gonna stop this for a moment here. I'm putting my boot back on. Put it back. I mean, yeah, put my foot back in my boot. Not because my foot's cold, because my phone's dropping out on the battery. And this is why I show this. Here, I'll show this for a little bit. Alright? It's not even that thick. And like I said in the video where I showed this is just made from scrap stuff. Trash almost. Like literally. Like I even showed it on video, like the contents were all scavenged or found off the landscape. Not bought, right? Byproducts of other things. From insulation from, let's say, a box, from something you can get, right? And then it's this flexible type of insulation. And this is why I like to have it now. Because it actually is useful in the winter. Right? I mean, you could make a version like this if you want with, like, natural materials too, like wool, silks, and stuff like that. If you want to go the more natural route, right? That would probably work too. But this version right here is one that anyone can make. I mean, like, literally, I found the baggie. The reflective material, found it. Or I'm reusing it. The foam that I have on the inside, byproduct from, let's say, something bought. I mean, I've actually found foam before, right? Right. And I know the value of it. I know how useful it is in the winter. At least to help me stay warm or whatever, right? These seating pads, this insulation pad, right? I've actually had other people use them, right? So it's not just me using it. I've had other people use them too, right? To show that, because I can explain it, I can tell all the stuff, but it's one of those things where you got to use it, right? Once you feel it, it's just like, oh, yeah, see, I see what you mean here. I'm like, yeah, see? It's not even that thick, right? And they're sitting, let's say, on a bench. Maybe not even a wooden one. Maybe it could be a metal one, right? I've actually had, not this exact same one that I just showed, but another one that I have, right? Where I've had people, because we were sitting at a bench in -20 on metal benches in the snow, right? And that metal would pull heat away from you very, very quickly, much faster than the water, right? And the only thing that was like keeping our tush warm, or not so cold, was the seating pads. I actually brought them, right? Because I knew we were doing that, right? And they're like, yeah. And none of us complained about it, right? Because we were insulated from the ground, right? So that heat loss from the ground, but when we're directly touching, was less because that conduction loss is a lot less. For example, I mean, I didn't show it in the video, but I can actually put this on the inside of me too, right? Because when I use this now, how I use this now is actually I'll put it on the inside of my jacket or something like that, or underneath my hoodie. And if I gotta sit down or whatever, then I'll bring it out and sit down with it. That way, it's always next to me. It's always it's helping me out. No, it's almost now like if it was like a winter everyday care EDC item for me now. Like it's like not useful, right? And let's remember, even if you're driving, right, Not everyone's got heated seats. Sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes your heater's not working in your vehicle, you know, for some reason, right? And of course, when your heater's not working in your vehicle, it's got to be the coldest day so far, right? You know, Murphy's law, as they say. Yeah, of course, the heat's not gonna work, and of course, it's extremely cold out. Of course, it's gotta be like that. No, the heater's not gonna stop working when it's like above freezing. No, it's not gonna stop working when it's well below freezing, right? I mean, I've used this sitting down in seats, right, that are not heated, right? And I tell people it's a passive version of a heated seat because like literally within 1 minute, sometimes less, it's already starting to warm up because like I said, it slows the heat loss. It slows the heat loss. So those little chambers of air are slowly warming up and insulating myself or whoever's using it, if not myself, from the ground or from directly touching things that are cold, whatever it is, like a seat, a metal seat, a wooden seat, and stuff like that, or even a car seat, right? When you get in a vehicle, yeah, the temperature above the seat, maybe not too bad, right? But the seat might still be cold because it takes a little bit of more time to warm that up, right? Because you gotta warm up the seat. If you have a heated seat, yeah, it starts to warm up, right? Because you're actually introducing, I guess, radiant heat in, right? Thermal energy in. So yeah, it'll warm up. In that same way, I'm putting a little bit of thermal energy into that insulation, and it'll stay warm, relatively speaking, right? Like I've shown people, I can't really show you guys, but you'll have to take my word for it. Like, when you just saw what I did, right? If I was sitting down, here, I'll show this. Oh yeah, I see you. Right. This is the reflective side I would sit, or whatever, right? And that's why I have the other side as a different color, right? Basically, I mean, I can almost feel it right now just doing this, right? I'm sitting down. Sorry, I don't have the lights on, but if I'm sitting on this, the direct surface will start to get warm, right? But underneath will feel cold because this is directly touching the ground or the snow or whatever, right? I've actually pulled this after sitting down, and I actually showed someone this, right? And I showed them, and I feel this side. They're like, "Oh, that's cold, right?" Then I showed them the side that I've been sitting on, that's been next to my body. And they're like, "Hey, Sierra, that's kind of warm." It's like, yeah, and that's what I feel when I'm sitting on it, or it's next to me, or next to my chest. And that's why I feel like it actually is very useful, like, especially if you're gonna sit down, right? For example. And I didn't show it in the video, but it doubles for some other things that I can use too. Oh, dang, Iron Fire Horse. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have cold hands, but the seat's cold too, right? You're just sitting on it, and it's just pulling the heat away from you, right? Because without those active heat sources going in, right? Like, let's say a furnace in a home, wood stove, a heater in your vehicle, and such, right? Well, those active heat sources, for example, the home starts to draw. Because basically, like, clothing, even this sitting pad, right? Basically, I'm warming it up like a battery. Like a thermal battery. Like our homes are a thermal battery that are always getting topped off by, like, let's say a furnace or stove or such, right? It's just like a vehicle. You're warming it up. You're warming up that battery, right? You're recharging that thermal battery back up to buy you some time again, right? Before you gotta Turn the furnace back on, turn the heat back on, raise the temperature back up, right? Because when that isn't in the question or on the fritz or whatever, right? The home, the car slowly will reach a very similar temperature to the exterior temperature, whatever it is, right? Because it'll start to balance itself out, right? The heat will pull away until like it starts to reach a similar temperature to the outdoor temperature, however long that takes, right? But in the same way that the longer you've been cold, the longer it takes to warm up. If your vehicle's been sitting idle for a long period of time in Arctic air and really cold temperatures, or your furnace hasn't been working for a while, and your home or whatever, right? Could be a tent too, I guess. Reaches that equilibrium type of temperature where it's like almost the same temperature as the outdoor temperature. I say almost, right? It takes longer for it to warm back up again. Like, think about it. Like, the thermal mass, right? It's just like lakes and rivers take longer to freeze in the winter because they have thermal mass, right? Eventually they will, right? But if the lake's totally frozen over, or something like that is totally frozen over, in that same way in the springtime, it takes longer for it to melt, is because there's a lot of cold in there. The energy, like the coldness of the metal of the vehicle, the coldness in the wood of a building or something like that, right? You gotta warm that back up again before the interior temperature starts to rise. If that makes any sense. That's something I've been paying attention to. I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense, right? Because like, in that same reason why a lot of the channels out there, right, recommend microclimates, right? Because unless you got like some sort of wood stove or something along the lines of that, that's really highly efficient and all that stuff, you're probably in a winter, let's say, emergency scenario, right, where you don't have heat or whatever, right, or your primary source heat, you're probably not going to be able to use a little butane stove or whatever to heat up a whole home. It's simply not enough energy in there to do that, right? Especially if your home has been dropping in temperature already, right? It's not at that comfortable 70 Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius. It's dropped down to this, like, in that time, however long, hours, whatever, right? Depending on the outside temperature, right? And all that stuff. And who's inside, and if you're running anything on the inside, it will reach down to, like, maybe even close to the freezing point, right? Maybe even below. Maybe, I say maybe, right? So it takes longer for it to warm back up. And especially if you don't have any insulation kind of buying you a little bit more time. I think this is why in that Texas freeze, you saw, I mean, there was their reasons, but throw busted pipes, water, right? Ice on the inside of buildings and homes and stuff like that. People getting cold on the inside because these places didn't have a heat source on the inside, right? And they didn't have insulation holding back some of that heat. And it becomes like an icebox in time, right? And like, if you're trying to heat up a big giant home icebox with something very small, it takes a while, right? It takes a while. It's just like, trying to heat something with candle. A bunch of candles trying to heat a pot of water, right? It takes a while. Because you're using such a small heat source, but the surface area or the volume that you're trying to warm up is massively greater in volume and in scale compared to it. So it takes an extremely long time. And I mean, extremely long time, if it's even possible, right? You'd be lucky even to get a couple of degrees higher, right? This is why something like microclimate, reducing the volume, the space you have to heat up, especially if you're using, say, some sort of butane, propane type of thing, heater source. And obviously, correct a window, have a smoke detector, have a carbon monoxide detector nearby, right, and stuff like that. Because cold sucks, but seals will never forget, is non-forgiving, right? Right. Once it happens, yeah, you might not see that next day, and it's one thing to shiver, it's one thing not to be up the next day or ever, right? No, you got frost. All right, Howie, appreciate it. No, this is on. Forgot to put it back in. Charge my phone. I forgot to put it back in. Come on here. Okay. Turn on my brightness a little. So yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? Because without that active heat source running, we just don't notice it as much because we have an active heat source running in the background, right? To almost counteract or that balance of heat lost from the cold, right? Because like I said, heat is always leaving our body. Heat is always going from hot to cold. That's how heat transfers from hot to cold. Our home, it's leaving through the windows. It's leaving through the walls, right? And stuff like off the insulation, all that stuff helps, right? It slows it down, but there is some heat loss, right? Insulation windows are not 100% efficient, right? There's only an upper level, right? It's just like even a furnace, even a vacuum sealed glass, reflective on the inside cork, natural cork lid at the top, right? In time, that will cool down because the heat is escaping through the top, not necessarily through the walls so much, right? Because it's getting reflected. There's a vacuum, right, to reduce the convection, right? But the conduction of the steam hitting the surface of said lid or cork, and it's slowly migrating the heat out, right? I mean, yeah, you're probably if let's say you had water or coffee in there, right? The first time if you haven't opened it in 8 hours, it'll still be pretty hot, right? But in time it will cool down because that system in terms of firms, yeah, it'll hold back some of the heat, right? It'll buy you hours or whatever, right? Especially if you don't consume it, you keep it in there. But in time, however long, past 10, 12, 24 hours, it'll probably cool off. It will probably cool off, right? Yeah, you got one already? I'm like, what's a couple heater? Just kidding. You haven't this. Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm assuming you've insulated the hell out of it. Right. I'm assuming so. Well, for what you got available, Iron Fire Horse, but I mean, like, because I've seen, like, the videos out there where people are, like, trying to do these challenges in a van or something along the lines of that. And let's say some sort of, like, with your get home bag or whatever, a car kit or whatever, right? Like, they're insulating the inside with everything they got. Right? The blankets and all that stuff, right? Making a microclimate in a vehicle, right? And that's the thing, too. You gotta remember, unfortunately, vehicles, starters, batteries can kind of fade in the winter, right? Issues probably happen, right? Not necessarily like in the summer with an overheated vehicle. It's more like it's getting too cold, or your battery dies because of the cold, because you didn't run it, or you let it get too cold, or something like that, or the heater's not working, right? So you're gonna make a little mini climb, a little mini climate area, right, or zone. Even if you can run the vehicle, like you said, right, your heater didn't work. I mean, if I ran into a situation like that, right, I'd be like, okay, well, let's see what we got to use, right, at that moment, whatever it is, blankets, something to insulate, right, because you will. I mean, imagine going on a road trip. Let's say 4 or 6 hours, right? You're visiting stuff like when Christmas is coming up. Obviously, Thanksgiving in the U.S. just happened, right? So people are around, right? Maybe coming back from in-laws, relatives, or whatever, right? And something like that happened, but you have to drive because you gotta get back home, right? Something happened to your heater. I mean, if I saw something like that, I would be like, okay, well, hey, there's a blanket in the back. I'll lay it over my feet. I mean, my legs, right? Keep my feet warm. Maybe insulate myself from the ground, from the seat, right? Because the seat's not warming up. There's no heat. The heated seats aren't working for whatever the reason is. Something happened, right? Murphy's like, oh yeah, of course this happens now, right? When I'm coming back, right, on the cold day, all right? Because that you would start to make trap layers of air, right? Microclimate, and then because you would still be able to, you know, steer and push the brake and all that stuff, right? Because you want that, you want to be able to feel your feet, right? You want to be able to feel that, right? Because you're driving. It's just like hands and feet are probably gonna be more important, right? Are pretty important because you're actively using them, right? You know. Yeah, yeah, okay, I bet. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what I'm saying is like active and passive sources. So obviously insulation and all that stuff, cover elements, right? To go along with the active heat sources available, whatever it is. Propane, wood stove, whatever, right? Oh, that's good to hear. Iron Fire Horse. That's good to hear. But yeah, I mean, this is why I say take winter seriously, especially if you know the temperature or whatever can drop out even more than that. Relatively speaking, for the time of year, relatively speaking, right? You know, like even if it's a spare sleeping bag in the back, right? Maybe it's not quite rated for the lowest temperature you can expect, but that adds layers in, right? And you start to layer it on, right? If it gets too hot, you start to sweat. Yeah, you can pull layers out. You can let some of the heat out, right? But if you don't got those layers with you, you're gonna start feeling cold probably in time. Start shivering and stuff like that. And when your muscles are cold, when you don't have dexterity or whatever, it's less. It's probably less likely you'll be able to do something as fast or as well, if that makes any sense, right? Because I know for some people that have a heating steering wheel, for example, they love that because it's just like their hands are always warm. They feel like they have dexterity. They can control the vehicle better because they're not fumbling with like cold hands, right? Because they can actually like feel feel their hand, right? So they're able to input in those things, right? Versus that, it's getting cold. My hands are cold. I'm suffering through quote unquote lag, but in the real world, right? Yeah, yeah, I get that. I get that. I get that. Yeah, I get that. I can understand that. No, but anyways, like the story is about like that's why you know obviously Iron Fire Horse, but like unfortunately some people don't make it out from those situations. Unfortunately, in a van, in a vehicle, right? That's that's why I know you'll take the precautions, right? All right, but I do hear about this every so often. Even during the Texas race, there was supposedly stories about that. Yeah, nice, Shannon. Welcome back. Yeah, I see. That's good. That's good. Then you got something else, right? But I think, like I said, have those active heat sources, but also have the passive sources to stay warm with, right? Insulation, sleeping bag. Well, also the clothing too, right? I mean, if anyone was moving here, for example, right, it's their first year in the fall, in the summer, and they're gonna be here, or they're planning to stay here, or whatever, right? Visa or whatever, right? Something work visa. I don't know, something along the lines of that. They're helping someone or whatever, right? But they're gonna be here for the winter, right? The first thing I would say to them, because actually I did meet someone that actually was like that. They moved back since, but they saw some of this winter that I can experience here. And the first thing I said to them, right, was like, layers help. A jacket helps. Like, originally when I said to them, I'm like, I don't know how long you're staying or planning or whatever, but it can get cold here, right? It just depends on the time of year, right? Especially in December, January, and February here for me. It's usually the coldest of the days throughout the calendar year. Usually November, March, April. Yeah, it's still cold, but it's not as cold, right? It'd be like a temperature right now, for example, where it's in the 20 Fahrenheit zone, minus 7, 8, more or less. It doesn't have the tendency to reach lower below 0 Fahrenheit, below minus 17, right? Compared to December, January, and February, where I can actually see that on a more regular basis from year to year to year, right? Maybe it's in December, maybe it's in January, maybe it's in February, right? I mean, I've shown in December a live stream like days before Christmas, and like actually I was at my buddy's place, right? I showed you guys the outside. At that temperature, it was minus 35 Celsius. It was even cold, way cold, like twice as cold as it is today, at least, right? And just like, yeah, and I definitely had more clothing with me, more shelter elements, because I knew to take it seriously, because I knew that I would have been outside every so often, right? So I'm like, instead of complaining about it, I'm just gonna bring something with me, just to make sure, right? Whatever it was at that time. I mean, ever since then, I've even quote unquote upgraded some of the gear, right? Enhanced it or something like that. Added more insulation value in, right, for what it is. Because like I said, if my 1 minute's too if I'm wearing 2 minutes and if it's too warm, I can take one off. But it's kind of hard to put clothing on or passive sources around you if you don't have them or don't have that resource available. Whatever it is, insulation, a jacket, a sweater, maybe it's wool, extra socks, long johns, ski pants, right? Like I got those things too, right? Because like I said, I can see the temperature drop out here quite low, relatively speaking, right? Not Siberia, North Pole, Antarctica cold, but it's cold enough for most people to consider it as cold, right? Where it's really cold, right? Because, well, it is, right? Where frostbite is within minutes at times on exposed skin, right? Where you can feel that. I mean, I remember this one time it was minus 30. I went out for not even 10 minutes. Wind was blowing, right? My forehead was just slightly exposed. I felt that. And that was only like, let's say 10, 20 minutes. I actually, like, because I just had my forehead just slightly exposed, but the windshield just blew on it. And the next thing you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I have, like, frostnip or, like, the freezing part of, like, it felt like a brain freeze. But not coming from the inside, right? But from the outside on my skin, on my forehead. I was just like, yeah, okay, let's cover up a little bit better now, right? I'm rolling down my, like, hand a little bit and trying to warm up my forehead, right? Because I was like, dang, that was so quick. 10, 15 minutes, right? But, of course, that was in a more extreme cold situation with wind and stuff like that. I'm just reading the chat real quick. Especially what Ironfire said, because she just wrote a story in here. Oh, that sucks. Ironfire horse. Dang. Yeah. That's why, like, because active heat sources, right? Propane, burning wood, right? I'm not saying they don't keep you warm, they don't, they don't help or whatever, but because they're active heat sources, they're active, like, you have to be concerned in terms of, like, CO, right? Carbon monoxide, for example, tipping over, fire hazards, right? Obviously you take precautions, all that stuff, right? But at least the passive sources, I don't really have to worry about so much about the CO, right? So much, right? You know what I mean? There's no sparks or open heat source or open flame, for example, right? So, yeah. But yeah, that sucks. That's not the way up. Ugh, that sucks. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah, that's cool. Iron Fire Horse, yeah. Or something along the lines of that, whatever, right? Something, as long as it can keep you warm, or it feels warm, or you've used it and it has been keeping you warm at certain temperatures, right? At certain temperatures. And yeah. Even if it's not wool, for example, right? And generally, you try to avoid cotton, or at least avoid wet cotton, avoid wet materials next to your skin and all that stuff, especially cotton, because that takes longer to dry in comparison to synthetics and wools and stuff like that. Yeah, that too, right? Oh, okay, on first, yeah, okay, but yeah, I mean, like, yeah, especially with pets or younger people around, let's just say younger ones around or whatever, right? And be careful about that. I mean, it's one thing to like I said, you don't want to be exchanging cold, you know, warmth for something else that may be uh, like you don't want to be straddling that kind of precarious line too much, right? You want to make things better, not worse, right? You know what I mean? I think this is why, like, a lot of the time for a vehicle or whatever, I think it's almost like a running rule. I mean, I remember hearing about this when I was in, like, middle school and stuff like that when I was younger, right? Turn on the vehicle for, like, 10 minutes just to cut the edge, right? If you're in a vehicle, right? It's to save the fuel, too. And honestly, during the winter time, and especially during the winter time, and other times of the year, too, try to make sure your fuel level, and I say fuel level, I'm not just saying gas, like in a vehicle, but other things too, butane, propane, right? Trying to top it off or have it as full as possible on a more consistent level, right? That way, if you have to turn on your vehicle to use the heat because whatever scenario, whatever, right? Because you could have a flat tire, broken axle, or whatever that you can't drive, but you can still start the vehicle, whatever, right? And you could be in traffic or whatever, right? I-95 in the U.S., all that stuff. If you had a full tank, you know what that means? You have a buffer zone of time. If you have half, you have half of that time, give or take, right? Especially if you turn it on just for 10 minutes, every 10 minutes or 15 minutes for, let's say, 5 minutes, for example, right? But if you have a quarter, you just have less and less time. Less and less time, right? That full tank buys you more time, a little bit more heat, right? So try to fill it up as much as possible, for example. And like other things, like your snow blowers or whatever, right? Make sure they're topped off. Even if it's battery powered or whatever, make sure it's topped off, right? Right? Because it's still a consumable. It doesn't matter if it's electricity or fuel, like petrol/gas, type of fuel, right? It's still a consumable, right? So you want to make sure it's as full as possible before you start snowblowing or driving, right? Especially if you're driving like longer distances, not just down 5 minutes, right? 10 minutes, right? Because I know people that, well, I mean, you see people on the highway even in on the winter, right? I mean, like I've been on the road before in the winter, right? And there's always absolutely two things absolutely that are on the top of the checklist: fuel and warmth and passive heating, like insulation, right? So and stuff like that. Like I would bring the seating pad, even if there was heated seats, right? Just in case something happened, the heated seats not working or some whatever, right? Or we're idling or just sitting in a parking lot without the engine on, right? I can still keep my butt warm and use that, right? Or use it for other things too, right? Like I said. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, do you learn first? That's cool. That's cool. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, for me, like, it's nice. It's nice. Well, I mean, sometimes, like I said, heaters in a vehicle, right? I mean, I used to know someone's vehicle that could get warm fairly quickly, right? But then again, I also know people that their vehicle takes longer to warm up, right? So in the meantime, while it's warming up, I'm gonna use these passive sources like a seating pad, so I don't have to suffer or complain about it while I'm waiting for it, right? To warm up the cab, warm up the main part of the vehicle, or whatever, right? No, I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just topped off another one after using it, but I got a couple, so I rotate them around. I always have at least one that's fully charged, right? That's how I go about it. So I don't actually always have to re-top it back off. I just kind of drain one, but I always have one fully charged, so I always can grab that one if absolutely necessary, right? I always got a full one, right? If that makes any sense. So yeah. Let's see what time is it here. Okay. I'll go a little bit longer. I'll probably go to this 2 hour mark, I think. As I remember, I started this just before the top. Yeah. Yeah, I'm at that hour and 45 minute mark. So yeah, I'll go for another 15 minutes. The 2 hour mark at least. At least. Because like I said, I think this is more, and that's why I'm doing this type of stream once again. Right? This is why I showed this earlier in the year. Earlier in the month. Twice now. Right? Look at what has happened since. Right? People out east, well, Central Time Zone, saw a lot of snow. Like I'll do some more research, see if like anything major happened, but because this is almost like me doing like a PSA like I did before, right? Because like I said, I think it's important because like like I said, being in the cold without proper gear or proper shelter without a heat source, or you're wet, kind of sucks. By the way, frostbite kind of sucks. you know, I've been out like on with some friends on a frozen lake, as they wanted to go ice fishing in -20, or on a cold day with minimal shelter, and that was cold. It wasn't the coldest I've experienced, but the duration, right? Hours, right? Hours. Were and our active heat sources are very minimal, very extremely minimal, right? So the passive sources like clothing were more important. Like before we even left, we were like bundling up, layering up like incredibly a lot, right? Because we were already outside for 5-10 minutes even before that, right? It's just like, yeah, and we're gonna be outside for like hours and hours, right?
right? And besides, we didn't want to worry other people, right, and stuff like that. And also, the vehicle that we came with, we always started that engine at least, let's say, at least on the top of the hour, at least if not half an hour in, because we also knew that, yeah, if the vehicle doesn't work and we can't just drive out, we're gonna have to walk, and yeah, that would kind of be like something to avoid whenever possible, right? Not saying we couldn't have done it if we had to, but if we don't have to, right, trying to like give it a little more forethought than in hindsight, right? Stuff like that. So we made sure that was working, right? I mean, even my friend had an extra sleeping bag, not rated for that temperature, but it helped. It could help too, right? If absolutely necessary, right? So that was one of those things I still remember. That it's like we always like we all of us kind of agree that's kind of one of the more colder experiences we've had, right? Together, anyways, right? I mean, like it rises up with some other things in terms of coldness, right? Because it was cold and the duration's long, right? Because it's one thing to be outside in -40 for 5 minutes. It's one, but it's totally different being outside in -20, -2 Fahrenheit, not for 5 minutes, but for like 3 hours, right? There's a difference, right? I mean, back in, what was it, around February of 2024, where I walked this 10 kilometers, 6.2 miles in -2 Fahrenheit, -20 Celsius, right? I mentioned this story because, yeah, because I wanted to try out some gear and see how warm it was, or at least relatively speaking, right? And I did that because I did, right? I have a reason why I did it. It wasn't just for the video, but I had a legit reason why I did it like that. I just did it as a video as well, right? But I had to do it anyways, right? But I just brought you guys along on that, right? And then, yeah, I was more or less dressed for that. I brought some extra layer. I was wearing mitts, not gloves, mitts, right? And stuff like that. Yeah, I had a winter jacket on, but I also had a hoodie underneath, right? Because I knew I was kind of planning on doing it like this, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm planning this out. I'm not really bring some stuff, right? Like it's not my warmest gear, right? I actually have clothing items that are kind of like meant for even colder temperatures or longer durations than that, or a mix of that. So I can dip into that stuff, but at that time I was just like, okay, it's it's only gonna be -20, right? Well, I'm not saying that's only, but like, okay, let's try this out, right? You know, so you saw me wearing this buff that I made like weeks before, for example, right? And that's why I inserted that video in because I'm like, yeah, I wanted to show that, right? Since then, I've learned quite a bit more. I've learned quite a bit more. I've updated some of my articles of clothing, some of that gear, a little bit more. I mean, there is this new thing, well, new to me anyways, something I'm trying out. Just like how Drops was saying that a ski mask didn't cut it in -50 Fahrenheit. Yeah, and because of something along the lines of that, I felt like, okay, the buff that I was wearing, and something else I was wearing, right, in my hand, I think that was the upper limit for specifically that type of gear. That was the upper limit. If it was out longer or the temperature was lower, I would need a little bit more. Right? It was just enough. Like it was like the limit of it. Right? I wasn't as comfortable as I would have been if I had something else that I did later, like last year and stuff like that. Something more with more layers, more or thicker insulation. I was just like, now that I even think about it, I'm just like, yeah, if I was using what I at that time in 2024, what I was trying out earlier this year, as in the 2024-2025 winter season, I would have been better off, or at least more comfortable, right? I wouldn't have had to like try to warm up my face a little bit more, you know, from the frostiness that I was starting to experience at times. Yeah, huge difference. Yeah. I didn't even hear anything about that. Yeah. So let's see, what am I at? Yeah, about 8 minutes, 7 more minutes or so. So yeah, this is why I've been trying it out. See, you guys have seen me do the sewing, right? And it's like, okay, that's a skill with gear, mitts, whatever, right? You know what's time for? Or at that time, it's time to experience it now, right? It's one thing to put this together. It's one thing to sew it, right? But is it? Let's go try it, right? And like, yeah, this is why I've been doing it. So every so often, it's just like, especially certain temperatures, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna try this out, right? Can it handle this -20 for what it is, right? It's -30, -22 Fahrenheit. Can this handle it, right? Even for, let's say, half an hour, at, for example, right? Because if it's still comfortable, I'm still relatively warm, then yeah, I can do a little bit more time. But if it can't even handle either that temperature or that duration, anything colder or anything longer, probably it'll start to reach the limit of that type of gear, or that amount of gear, or that amount of layers of gear, if that makes any sense. Like, ever since, like, I'm actually considering now making a different type of buff now, or gator. Like, that's not just that traditional, it's a single layer. I've actually been considering this, actually, now that I even think about it now, like, more and more. I'm like considering making a winter version, like an actual real hardcore winter version. That's a lot better than what I showed before. Alright. Because I think that would help a lot more. So I've been considering something like that. I have something that can work in the meantime, but like, I actually have something else that can work in the meantime. And it's really warm, but it's like not just a single thin little layer like a buff or a gator. It is, half an inch thick. 2, 3, 4 layers, right? Like, I mean, I've shown some people a picture of it or whatever, right? So if they drop in or whatever, they'll know. But like, it's really warm. I mean, like, I'm still trying to see the bottom limit, the upper limit on it. Because I actually tried it out when it was -30. I was just like, yeah, my face was really warm, right? I never felt that cold. Because the heat loss was so slow that basically I'm just holding back the heat, right? The heat's not escaping as fast. It's just very, very slowly trickling out, right? To the point that it's, I'm warming up, I'm staying warmer, right? And that's what matters, right? Staying warmer. So I don't have to deal with frostbite, complain about it and all this other stuff, right? I don't like, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, I live here in Canada, right? But, like, it's not that I hate the cold, but it's not, like, always my cup of tea at times, right? I'm just like, of course it's gotta be this cold. But instead of complaining about it, I'm trying to do something about it. Proactive, right? Because preparedness is being about proactive. So I'm like, okay, well, instead of complaining about it and, all the time or whatever, I'm going to do something about it. And this is why I'm like, you know what? This is why I've been doing this sewing a lot more. And you've been seeing it during the wintertime a lot more for me. Because I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Because, like, stop complaining about it and actually make something. Or do something. Or do what I can about it as much as possible with the resources that I have. For example, this is why when you saw this jumbo mitt for me, that's like exactly what I mean. That's like, that almost sums up what I just said in the last like 2-3 minutes in a single video, where I took literally scraps of trash and I converted it into something for the wintertime. Right? I just had to Take the time to set it up, sew it together, bring it together, bring these resources to just like the layers, bringing the layers together to help stay warm, right? As a metaphor, I brought these items, these resources together, right? Well, maybe you definitely have your tolerances, but not everyone's like that, right? Not everyone's like that. I've seen people wear earmuffs without anything on their head, so I can't do that. I'm not like that. I can't do that. I cannot do that. I will complain and complain and complain. All right, I'll be like, my face is cold, right? Right. It's just the way I am, right? You know, tolerances, like I said earlier. Oh, did she? Do you still got that Iron Fire Horse? You still got that scarf? I almost feel like highlighting that comment just because it's got CR in it. Now I see Iron Fire Horse. Yeah. Looks like I'll go over that 2 hour mark. But yeah. Slightly more than I thought. Because I'm still talking about something. But yeah. This is why, like I said, I've been doing a lot more about it. Because I kind of figure now, I'm like, yeah, winter's probably one of those things I probably should prepare much even better. Just for the, you know, not just because something may happen or whatever. It's because, you know what? There's one thing that will happen. I will probably have to shovel the snow. I will probably be walking it. I will probably have to walk in it when it's cold or snowing, right? Or something along the lines of that, or travel or whatever, right? And it's like a quarter of the year, right? That's a quarter of the year, right? That's calendar year, and I better be ready for it, right? And unfortunately, I can't hibernate that whole time. Well, because I can't. Because I gotta be responsible, or I gotta go places, or whatever, right? So I'm like, yeah. So that's why I've been like bringing this stuff out, putting stuff together, combining things together, and stuff like that, and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Fine tuning that system. All right, fine tuning that system a lot more. So it's kind of like, okay, these, yeah, like I tried some of the stuff before. I should be warm with this, right? It's the same temperature or warmer, right? I should be warm enough, for example, right? I mean, it's all relative, right? I mean, like, depending how long I feel I'm gonna be outside for in the conditions, how windy it is, how cold it is, right? If it's 0, it's one thing. 32 Fahrenheit, that's one thing, right? If it's minus 40, that's a totally different. Minus 30, that's a totally different thing, alright? Where the frost nip and frostbite come much quicker, right? It's much more accelerated rate, right? And I'm like, yeah. Because of that, I'm like, yeah, I better bring some insulation. So, you know, unfortunately, we're not meant for extreme cold like that, right? We have to wear clothing, right? The technology of clothing, right? Like even a hide or whatever it was a form of technology, right? Because that's what we need. That, I mean, like we really do need that, right? I mean, like, yeah, people have the tolerances. I've seen people wear shorts and shoveling snow, right? However, there's an upper limit to all that, right? There's an upper limit to that. Eventually, in time, we'll probably either need a heat source or some insulation to keep warm with. Yeah, hat hood, belt cover plus hat plus hood. Yeah. Vanessa Katie, welcome back. Well, I don't know about that. I think, I think he's always leaving you, right? I think it's always radiating out, right? All the time. I think your skin is expelling all that heat out, right? Because it's not holding it back. So, like, the more exposed skin you have, you're probably losing a lot of heat for that. In my opinion. Like, Like, go wear the warmest jacket you have on, and then roll the sleeve up a bit, expose your arm to it, to that cold, right? You're probably gonna notice that first, right? Everything else is warm except for your arm because you're exposing more skin. You're letting more heat out. You're not holding it back so much, right? And it's just radiating out, right? And it's cooling down faster and faster in comparison to like the rest of your body. Did you just write that, Iron Fibers? What the? What the? Did she just write that? Really? I can't believe she just wrote that. But no, I'm not saying head covering isn't important though. It's still important though. Right? Cold ears, all this stuff. Cold nose, yeah, it kind of sucks. Cold cheeks, face, yeah, it kind of sucks. Yeah, let's remember that too, right? Some of those effects from that can be very permanent. And I'm not talking about just like from extreme frostbite, right? Some things can be a little bit more permanent. Yeah. Hola. Hi, Sunflower. Yeah. Yeah. No, she didn't. But yeah, she just did. Well, I guess I might as well go longer here because Sunflower is in here and Vanessa Kitty's like seeing more things again. And, I mean, like, Iron Fire Horse, she's so awesome because she's been here the whole time. Because she got my memo. It's an awesome scarf. Yeah. I used to not like scarves as much. But I've been realizing as time goes on, it's not that I don't like scarves. I hate the tassels on though. I hate the tassels on scarves. I think that was always this is the reason why I didn't like scarves when I was younger. The tassels on them. So, but since as I get older, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna adapt it, change it to my liking on it, right? So like, yeah, no tassels. No more tassels on scarves for me. I'll cut them off. Like, I'm serious about that, right? Because it really doesn't add to the functionality, and it gets stuck in zippers and stuff like that, which is annoying too, right? Which I always hated too. So I'm like, yeah, that's what I did now. I cut the tassels off, and now I'm like actually using them more. Because I don't feel like, oh, I'm gonna get stuck on a zipper or something like that, right? And it still functions. It just doesn't have that, ooh, look at these nice tassels, right? Yeah. I just, like I said, I, I just didn't like that kind of like, if it didn't snagged on something, for example, right? That's like a piece of string or a piece of cord dangling, right? Or whatever. It tangles. Or it could, anyways, right? The pom poms. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that too, right? I think, yeah, then you can understand what I mean about that, then, right? It's just that the zippers kind of like one of those things, right? And usually jackets have zippers, right? Yeah, they got buttons too, but sometimes or whatever. But usually it's a zipper. Usually it's a zipper. Usually it's a zipper, but then there's buttons to kind of seal that off or whatever, right? But usually you still have to use the zipper or whatever, right? But it was just so annoying at times, right? And it gets snagged, and then you can't fix it right away, and now you're gonna open jacket because you can't zipper it up all the way or whatever, right? And it's just always annoying to me. So I've changed that since. Yeah, I knew you said a thing. You're eating a carrot. You're eating a carrot. I mean, I get this air hat that I'll wear when it's extremely cold, right? Now, and the thing is, as I'm as the temperature drops, right, as this winter comes again, right, I'm probably gonna be running these air tests every so often based on temperature and how much time I'm outside, right? Because I'm trying to gauge not only how warm the shelter cover clothing elements are, right? It doesn't matter what it is. Could be gloves, could be mitts, could be a hat, could be toque, could be a scarf, could be this, could be that, could be gaiter, could be a jacket, could be this kind of clothes, could be ski pants, whatever, right? Could be boots too, and all that stuff, right? And I'm trying to gauge it as much as I can, right? So like, I'll wear the same, like I'll look at the temperature, I'll be like, okay, I'm done wearing the exact same thing. The only difference is, relatively speaking, as much as possible, is that the temperature is different, right? Relative, I've been inside for the last like 6 hours, so I should be at room temperature more or less, right? That stuff, right? Okay, now let's go outside. Okay, it's -2 Fahrenheit. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Let's try this again. Oh, next week it's supposed to be -30, -22 Fahrenheit. Let's try that and see the difference, right? If I'm still as warm, then it's working real, right? But if I feel that heat loss, I'll be like, maybe there might be an upper limit to this, at least for me, if that makes any sense, right? And like I said, that could be mitts, jacket, whatever, right? Yeah, okay, ladies. Yeah, you ladies are like having your own fun there, right? Dang, maybe I should just name this ladies' night at this rate. Oh, did I say that? I did. Well, Vanessa, if you ever do that, right? If you ever do that, remember those onesies, mascot costumes. They're quite warm, right? They're quite warm. I mean, maybe this is why some people like onesies in the winter, right? Because it's like instead of wearing pants and a shirt or hoodie, right? It's connected, right? Almost like the difference between like a mitt and a glove in terms of warmth, right? Is you hold more of that warmer air next to your body. I'm just saying. Well, Vanessa, I mean, like, remember, I live here in Canada, right? I cannot dodge. I mean, unless I become a snowbird randomly, I cannot dodge the snow or the cold. There's an eventual. It's an eventuality. I almost know. Maybe not quite a guarantee, but it's an eventuality, right? I assume that I'll see at least a few days of -30, at least some form of precipitation of some sort, right? Sometimes it's some years it's the window is smaller. Some years the window is bigger and there's multiple windows of that happening, right? Where it's multiple times, right? And maybe the temperature moderates a little, but then it drops back out again for another week again, right? And like, yeah, I need to be ready for that as much as possible. I like how you have these gauntlet mins now. You guys are just having a field day, hey? Dang. Yeah, onesies, yeah. Oh, speaking of which, I have to. Yeah. Iron Flowers, don't you mean auto carrot? Remember, you coined that like before on my stream, right? You remember that, right? I still remember that. I'm just saying because you guys mentioned a rabbit or a bunny, or whatever. But yeah. Dang that auto carrot. I meant to write slow, not snow. I meant to write snow, not slow, or whatever. Just kidding. But yeah. And I think, like and I have done this, and I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention this once again, right? Generally speaking, water can be, well, let me actually say this again. Water can be your friend or foe in wintertime. You can make it your friend when it can be an ally to you, but it can also be an enemy or a foe to you. It just depends how you use it and where it is. If it's on your skin, your clothes are wet, yeah, it's probably gonna be a foe to you. But oh look, it's in a metal bottle or a plastic bottle, and it's really really warm. Maybe not boiling. It's your friend. It's an ally to you, right? It's helping you stay warm, right? So just don't burn yourself, and honestly, don't spill it. Definitely don't spill it. I think that's the more important thing. Definitely the more important thing. Because, like, I hear this, and I've done it before, right? However, you gotta be you gotta make sure if you ever use hot water as a heat source, as a heat source, right? Maybe you're indirectly using fire or propane or whatever to heat it up, right? I mean, that's how I would do it, anyways. Like, when I saw these people huddling around, let's say, an open fire on some of these videos from the Texas freeze, right? Some of these videos that I did see, right? And stuff like that. Because they were trying to stay warm. And I can understand that, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, right? You know, in the survival community, bushcrafting community to a certain, and preparedness community to a certain degree, fire cooks your food, boils your water, keeps you warm, deters the animals or whatever, right? But, like, I'm just indirectly staying warm with it. And that's how I've been saying it. Like, that's how I would do it, right? If I was in that Texas thing at that time, whatever, right? And this was happening, right? Without any, knowledge of the area or whatever, right? That's the first thing I would have did, right? Indirectly kept using, if fire was the only option, if that was the only option, right? All right. Versus, like, oh yeah, let's just bring the charcoal grill, the barbecue inside. Yeah, that's not gonna turn out well, right? There's a thing called CO, right? Anything that burns releases it, per se, right? But, I'm gonna heat up water, so to speak, right? Maybe even snow, right? Because now that I even think about it even more, right? If people were actually melting snow for water, anyways, well, you know what? You might as well heat some of it up. Especially if you have the fuel or fire source available for it and are able to keep that going for a little bit for whatever it is, right? Even on a barbecue, right? That's how I would have did that. I have done that before, not necessarily because something as major as that, but, and I explained this before. Sorry, I'm not looking at chat at the moment, but I went to a friend's place. Their furnace wasn't working. It's minus 20 Celsius outside, minus 2 Fahrenheit outside. The indoor temperature was almost as cold as the outdoor temperature. Like, almost. I mean, almost. It was, you can see your breath inside. You could feel coldness still, right? Walking in. The only difference is it's at the wind, right? Now, this was not grid down. This is not a power outage, right? It's just, oops. Furnace ain't working for whatever reason, right? And that can happen, right? For example, right? They still had electricity, right? And the first thing I noticed, I'm like, okay, well, you got some water, right? And he's like, yeah, the plumbing's still working, CR, right? Then they like their pop, right? So I'm like, looking, I'm like, oh, hey, you got some 2-liter bottles? Yeah, because whatever, right? And I'm like, pot, water, 2-liter empty bottle, combine that all together with a little bit of heat. Now you got a radiant heat source, right? So being underneath blankets, yeah, it'll trap some your warmth, but now you're generating extra radiant heat, not just from your body, right? So your body's gonna start feeling warm, and I made a few for them while I was there at that time, right? Because they had someone else there too, and they're like, yeah, they felt better. I don't know exactly how that all panned out. I mean, I did see them later, so obviously it panned out well. But like something like that. That's exactly how I would have did it, straight up. Because I've had to do that before. I'm like, yeah, and this is why I say, water in the winter can be your friend, can be your friend, can be your foe too. Can be your ally, but it could be the enemy too. Just depends how you want to approach it or use it. All right, let's see my chat again. Take care, Iron Fire Horse. Let's see here. Yeah, Furnace does help though. Yeah, Furnace does help though. But I do realize the Furnace only buys you so much time. But it does help though. I do know it does help. At least in the first, let's say, 12 hours of it. Maybe 24 at most. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah. Vanessa and Iron Power is, yeah. Did I miss something? Okay. Okay, Vanessa, Kitty. All the best in that, by the way. I said I was gonna go at the 2 hour mark. It's like 17 minutes over. Well, I guess I might as well go till that 2.5 hour mark at this rate. Yes, I think I will go towards that 2.5 hour mark. It seems like a nice round number to go on and stuff like that. And for the people that I usually able to message or whatever or see me or talk to me, right? If you want to show me what you're wearing in the winter right now, in that cold, that snow, I'm more interested. I'm just kind of interested, right? Because it's been seeing these clothing options, right? I'm like, no, it's not supposed. You don't have to like show it on a runway or a red carpet, but I'm just trying to get a sense of how people else wear certain little things. Because it's like trying to adjust my sewing, so it seems, to it. Because that's what I've been trying to do a lot more. Is just like, okay, I can sew these winter things for myself, because I'm the one wearing it, right? So I can put it on, right, and test it or try it on, right? And I think if some are still here, right, you can attest to this. Not everyone has the same body shape or size or length or height or whatever, right? Some things are a little, right? So if I'm making something for someone else, for example, right, especially if it's an article of clothing or whatever, right, I want to make sure that it fits them, right? Like I have made my modified gloves, which I modified as to be used as mints from a video I've shown earlier in the year, right? When I was giving it to the person, right, because they gave me the gloves, right, and I, did all the stitching. I told them, I'm like, you have to put these on right now. They're like, why? It's not that cold. No, it's because I want to make sure they fit you nicely. They're comfortable, right? That there's enough give in them that you can like splayed out your hand, or to a certain degree. It's not too tight, right? It's not too tight around the wrist or whatever, right? Because honestly, you don't want it too tight that it cuts off circulation, right? And that's why I was explaining to them. I'm like, yeah, I don't want it, this article to be too tight around your hand, right? Or else it'll cut off the circulation, and you might feel colder than than usual, right? So there's some air pockets, right, and stuff like that. And of course, so it's not like a pain to put it on and off, right? I think that's important too. Oh, I didn't realize it's almost half an hour. It's all good. And this one, maybe I'll just go for the 5 minutes. I'll just go to the top hour. Screw it. I'll just go to the top hour. Because I'm also need to fuel the inside of my body too, aka food. And I need to message someone. And I gotta remember what time it is. So I appreciate everyone dropping by on this winter preparedness type of stream with me. And hope some of these things can help you folks out there. And to keep it in mind, right? And maybe not necessarily share the stream out. You can if you want. But I want you guys to share the information. Right? Right? Stuff like that. Because, you know, I care for you guys. I do. I truly do. So I'll sing in a song right there for you. Hey, I just made a nice end rhyme right there. Isn't that nice? I didn't even try. I wasn't even trying. So, yeah, 2-minute warning here. Yeah, I see my clock says 57 after, so yeah, top of the hour. And I appreciate you folks, alright? Like I said to someone else, right? Seeing what you guys go through out there at times, or do, motivates me to try to help you guys out, or to up my own game on it as much as possible. Especially since, you know, at times I can have the potential of doing it, or I have the resource, right? Just like some of the sewing or converting of materials. This is why I've been doing it more and more, because it's just like, not only because, you know, for content for the channel, for you guys to see, but it's for me to, well, and to reuse something. It's so, it helps me out too, right? In terms of actually making it, right? Because, and I can try it out. And I you know, these jumbo mints I did show someone, you know, my friends like, where'd you get those? Where'd you get those? I'm like, I made them. And they're like, what? Really? Right? And then I was like, you know, if you saw the video, you know what I mean, right? When you see it, right? I'm like, yeah. Right? Because, you know, and work these kind of networking to a certain degree, right? Because if they, you know, if they could see what I just made or sold together, they'll be like, hey, can you help me with this? And maybe share some networking in there, right? Maybe help them out and, you know, maybe barter something, for example. Whatever it is, like, you know, yeah. I'll make one for you, and, you know, maybe I get something in exchange, and say like layering candle or whatever, right? Something along the lines of that, or a can of butane or something along the lines of that, right? And to me, that'll be well worth it, right? But to do something like that, I have to practice that skill. I gotta practice it, right? Hence, like, there's this other video where I showed me doing the example, where at the end, I showed like 3 or 4 additional examples, is because, yeah, I was trying it out more than once or twice, or more like 5 times. Or was it 6? I think I almost made 6 pairs. Because I made one, at least one for someone else, right? So, yes. Yeah. Sunflower, message me after the stream, please. But anyways, I appreciate you folks and the ladies that came by. Also the ladies. All you guys and gals are awesome. And go do something awesome out there and learn something new, the best that you can. Apply that knowledge, right? Maybe crochet something, or knit something. Oh, wink, wink. And try to help someone the best that you can. You guys are awesome. Stay warm out there. Don't exert yourself too much. Don't sweat outside in the wintertime. Stay warm. Do what you need to do to stay warm out there. And I'll catch you all on the next video / live stream, whenever that is. Take care, everyone.